Before we add resources to our various activities here, I want to point out a couple of things. One is that you'll notice that I have some of my activities. They are dependent on a predecessor being completed, so everything in this particular set of activities is using finish to start relationships, so we aren't using anything special as far as the types of relationships here. But you'll notice here that I've made all of these driving tasks, driving down to Atlanta, dependent upon not the tasks involved in packing the apartment or a finishing task here, but in fact on the entire sub-deliverable of packing the apartment up. This is very useful because this way it makes our diagram much more clean, and also we may add other tasks in here as we're going along, and we don't have to want to go back and rethink these dependencies. We know that we're not going to drive off in these trucks in John's car down to Atlanta until we have the apartment here in Columbia packed up. So this way we are just looking for this sub-deliverable to be completed before we move forward with the actual driving off. Now we want to go ahead and add some resources to this project so we can find out how much it's going to cost to do this with our friends and whether we're actually likely to make any money on this. So what we're going to do first is go to the resource sheet. So I'm going to do that here. The Gantt chart is what I'm looking at right now. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose resource sheet. If I was at the Gantt chart section here and I had the view bar turned on, so I can turn it on that way, I would then kind of scroll down until I got to resource sheet. So here's where we can actually enter different types of resources. So let's start out with a resource that we're highly dependent on here, and that is John's Friends. So we're going to enter Friends, and that's going to be a work type of resource. So because it's a work type of resource, we can set the maximum number that we have. In this case, John has 4 friends that are willing to help him out with this particular project. And lucky for John, their standard rate is $0 per hour. So we're going to leave that as it is. John is also going to have some other work resources. He's going to rent a truck. Let's say he's going to rent a smaller truck, and that's going to cost him just one of them he's going to rent, so we'll leave that at 100% for the level. It's going to cost him $140 per day. Okay, and then truck number 2 is going to be a little bit bigger truck, so that's going to cost him $240 per day. He's going to also have some expenses that are going to just be outright costs he's going to have to pay. For example, he may have to pay for gas for the truck and for his car. So we're going to put that in. That's not a work resource, that's just going to be a cost. So we're going to get to enter what that cost is when we actually assign it to our different resources. We're going to have, probably some other costs as well. We're going to have to buy meals for folks. We're probably also going to have some flights because we're going to fly our friends back to Columbia, Missouri after they have driven us down to Atlanta and helped us unpack. Some hotels while they're in Atlanta, and we might have just some miscellaneous costs. Okay, so I'm going to enter those. I'm going to go back and change all of these now to costs. You'll notice that by default it comes up with work as the type of resource. Oh yes, it can do this faster. I'm just going to plod along and do it my way that I like to do it. Thank you very much. We're going to have a few other material resources as well. So we're going to just say that John, when he's running the trucks, is also going to buy some boxes. And those boxes are going to be used to pack up various parts of his apartment. So he's going to have large boxes that he's going to purchase. So a large box. He'll purchase a number of those. Those are material resources. So in this case, let's say that a large box costs him, $7. And then he's going to also have some medium boxes. It's also going to be a material, and it's going to cost him $5 for the medium boxes. And then small boxes, back and change that there so it says box so I don't get confused. That's also going to be a material resource, and that's going to cost, oh, let's just say that's only $4 for a small box. So now just to review, we have a three work resources. We have our friends and we have these 2 trucks. We have 400% of our friends. We have 100% of each truck. Our friends are $0 per hour, and the truck 1 is $140 per day. Truck 2 is $240. We also have some costs that are going to be associated with this move, but we're going to enter those as we estimate them or as they incur if we're actually keeping track of our receipts in Microsoft Project as well. We're also going to have some material costs. These are going to be things that are going to be consumed or used up. We can't resell them at the end of this. We don't rent them by the hour or anything like that. So we're going to buy these boxes and use them for the move, and we're not going to worry about what happens to them next. Now that we have our resources entered, we're going to go ahead and assign these to our various activities. We'll see that there's a little bit a different way that we assign materials versus costs versus work resources to our activities. So let's go ahead and go back to the Gantt chart and get started. So there's several different ways that we can assign resources to activities. I'm going to show you the one that I think is the most methodical, most reliable, especially as you're getting started here. What we're going to do is I'm going to click on my activity. This one is to have lunch delivered from the sub shop for friends that are helping. So we're going to have this meeting with our friends before we actually start the moving, probably the day before. And I want to assign a resource of a cost of that meal. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come over to this resource ribbon or resource tab, and there'll be a icon here for assign resources. That will pull up this dialog box, and what's kind of neat about this is we can assign resources through here. We can also remove resources through here, but we don't have to just assign our resource, close it, go on to the next one, open it, close it. We can actually leave this dialog box open, and we can select different tasks kind of in the background here, and it will let us then assign resources to whatever task happens to be highlighted. Okay, so it isn't really that slow. It works very well to assign resources fairly quickly. So in order to have lunch delivered, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign a meal cost. Now in this case, I don't select particular units. I'm going to just enter the cost of that meal. So I'm going to click over here where I have meal and then cost in the cost column, and I'm going to say that it's $60 for the cost of that meal. Now I can press return and it will assign this, or I can just hit the assign button up here. Either way, it will now assign this particular resource, in this case a cost resource of $60, to this activity. You notice that any resources that are assigned to the task that is highlighted will be checked off here. There will be a check mark there. Okay, the next one is develop and distribute schedule. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select that particular task, and then I'm going to assign a miscellaneous cost. Let's say I have to go down to Kinko's and copy some part of my schedule or the map to get to Atlanta or something like that. So I'm going to just put in here $15 of costs. Make hotel arrangements in Atlanta. This is also going to be a cost. This is going to be a cost for the actual hotel. So once we make sure everybody's on board and has agreed that we're leaving, we're going to go ahead and incur some costs there of reserving a hotel for our friends in Atlanta. So I'm going to say that that's a $600 cost. It's because we're going to go ahead and prepay at this time for those hotels. Moving on down to this next major deliverable of packing the apartment, we do have to have the rental trucks available while we're packing up the apartment so we can load them at the same time. So I have, that's the reason I have this particular activity here. We're going to go get the trucks from the rental place and we're going to have them available. Now what we do here is we don't put a cost information in here. In this particular instance, since it's a work resource, we assign the percentage. So in this case, we need 100% of truck 1 to be there. And I also need 100% of truck 2 to be there. Okay, and it will calculate the cost based on the daily rate, the hourly rate, or whatever it is. Now, in order to pack up the kitchen, I'm going to need my friend, or at least one of my friends, to do this. So I'm going to assign a friend at 100%. And I'm also going to assign some of these boxes. So let's say for the kitchen, I'm going to, these materials, we're going to enter the number of units as well. It won't be a percentage, it'll be a number. So I'm going to say that I need 10 medium boxes. And I need, let's say, 10 small boxes as well. Okay. Go down here to pack living room. I once again need a friend to do that, 100%. It's going to take them all day to pack that living room up. And we're going to use, in this case, some large boxes now. I can use these little arrows here to go up. You notice it has increments of 0.5. It's kind of odd to have half of a box being used, but we're going to say that we need 8 large boxes here, and we need 5 medium boxes, and we need 5 small boxes. Notice that it's calculating the cost based on the number of units. For packing up the bedroom, I also need a friend to do this. And I'm going to need, once again, let's say 8 large boxes, and I'm going to need 5 medium boxes. Packing up any other remaining items, stuff from the hallway closet, stuff that might be outside, we're going to need a friend to do that as well. And we're going to need a bunch of large boxes. Let's say we need 10 of those, and we need 10 medium boxes as well. And we'll also throw in here some small boxes. I don't know if we've used very many of those. Okay, so now we have these material costs as well as the friend that's actually going to be doing this. Let's say that we actually, our friend backs out on us and we have to put in a resource here that's actually somebody we're hiring to pack this. So we could then substitute in, there would be an actual cost associated with that then. Okay, let's move on to driving the truck 1 down to Atlanta. So I obviously need truck 1 for that. So I need 100%. Whoops, now I kind of double clicked on that. That brings up more information about the truck. I'm going to hit cancel here. So if you do double click on any one of these and it brings up a dialog like that, don't fret, just go ahead and close it. I'm going to need 100% of truck 1. I'm also going to need a friend to drive that truck as well. And I'm also going to have some gas costs associated with this. So in this case, let's say that it's going to take $250 of gas to get that truck down to Atlanta. Let's also say that our friends that are riding in that truck, they're going to want to stop and get some pop along the way or get something to eat. So let's just give $50 of miscellaneous petty cash for them to use when they're driving that truck down to Atlanta. Driving truck 2 to Atlanta, I obviously need 100% of truck 2. I need 100% of one of my friends. And I also need some gas. So I believe we said $250 in gas or something like that. And then for my miscellaneous costs, I'm once going to have $50 of miscellaneous for them to stop and get something to eat or something to snack on along the way. Drive John's car to Atlanta. For that, I just need a friend to do that. And I will need some money for gas. Hopefully it's not as bad as the trucks. Let's say it's $100. And we also need some miscellaneous expenses allocated to that. Okay, let's go down to unpacking in Atlanta. We're going to reserve, once we get down to Atlanta, we're going to reserve some flights back to Columbia, Missouri. So we have a cost of those flights for our friends, and let's just say that that's going to be $1,000. We're going to also get a shuttle van for them back from the airport to their house. Put that on a miscellaneous, and let's say for all 4 friends, that's going to cost us $250. So we're going to go ahead and make those reservations and prepay for our friends there. And we also need to have this next task, the first one under unpacking apartment, have rental trucks at apartment. We also need to have those rental trucks available at the apartment to be unpacked. So once again, there's not going to be any gas costs associated, but I do need to have 100% of truck 1 there, and I need to have 100% of truck 2 there as well. At the end of the day, we'll go ahead and return the trucks to U-Haul or wherever we got them from, and we can then stop incurring that cost. So unpack the kitchen. We've already kind of expended the material expense of the boxes here, so all I need now is a friend to do that. So for each one of these, I need a friend. I'm not sure that took there. I forgot to click assign, so I'm going to go back and do that. Make sure that each one of these unpack has friends at 100%. If you have to accidentally added at 150, you can go back and click remove and or go back and adjust it, and it will then adjust the allocation accordingly. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to double check my work. It's always a good idea to double check your work. As you saw there just at the end, it's easy to sometimes click off of the dialog box and think that something's assigned when it's not. So we always want to double check our work, make sure that it all makes sense here. Looking good so far. It doesn't look like I've made any other mistakes. I'd correct any mistakes that I had made along the way. If I had allocated some friends at 175% or something like that, I'd change that. So now I can go ahead and stop assigning resources. I'm going to close this dialog box. You notice that the Gantt chart puts those resources out to the right-hand side by default. We can alter that if we'd like. We'll show you that later when we talk about different ways to format and print out things from Microsoft Project. But what's really neat about this is we can now, in our table form here, is we can not only see what the various durations are for our different tasks, we can actually see what the costs are. So I'm going to insert a column here called cost. And then we can see the cost. It's going to be rolled up by different sub-deliverables here. So you can see those costs associated with different parts of this. So unpacking in Atlanta, which includes getting our friends back, that's going to be about $1,600. Okay, so let's actually add a summary task for the entire project here. There's a couple different ways we could do that. I could create a task manually and indent everything from it, but I also know that if I come over here to Format and I choose Project Summary Task, it will show me that the total cost of this is $4,227. Okay, so it looks like John and his friends are only going to have a couple $100 to share each when this project gets over, because he had $5,000 from his company to help with the move. So it looks like it'll be just little bit less than $800 that they'll actually have left over. So this is where we could start to look at this project, and we could start to um, look at our resources, look at our costs, and start to figure out things like, hey, what if we just rented a car and we didn't have them fly back? We had them drive back. Would they be willing to do that if it would mean they each got a couple hundred extra dollars for this? Could we go around and find some boxes that we wouldn't have to pay for? Is there a way that we could rent just one huge truck and not have to take two trucks? We can start to break these things down as far as their costs and their amount of work that it's taking by different sub-deliverables, and see also if we could just outsource entire parts of this project to someone else, or if we could make some substitutions and make it a little bit better off for John and his buddies. So hopefully that gave you a good overview of how we can allocate cost resources, work resources, and material resources to the various tasks within Microsoft Project.